As the entries continued, John saw a clear pattern. Each one was filled with love and pride, a father documenting the milestones of his only son. December 25, 2000. John is 10 this year, and he's growing up so fast. He asked for a telescope, and I couldn't wait to see his face when he unwrapped it. Sure enough, he spent the whole evening staring at the stars, pointing out constellations and asking questions I couldn't answer. I hope he always stays this curious, always looking to the sky and dreaming big. That telescope had been one of John's favorite gifts. He spent countless nights on the porch with it, his father sitting beside him, listening patiently as he rattled off facts about planets and galaxies. John, softly, he was always there, even when I didn't notice. The diary also revealed sacrifices John hadn't been aware of as a child. December 24, 2005. Work has been tough this year, but I managed to get Christmas Eve off to spend with John. Money's tight, but I don't want him to feel that. I bought him a new bike. He's been asking for one since summer. I know I'll have to work overtime to make up for it, but seeing him ride that bike tomorrow will make it all worth it. John froze. He remembered that bike. It had been the highlight of his Christmas, a sleek red model with shiny wheels. He hadn't realized at the time what it had cost his father, not just in money but in effort. The guilt crept in. How often had he taken his father's love and sacrifices for granted? The diary wasn't all about Christmases past. It also contained glimpses of his father's dreams for him. December 25, 2010. John is 15 now, and he's growing into such a smart, kind young man. He told me he wants to be an architect. I couldn't be prouder. I know he'll achieve great things because he's always been determined and creative. I hope he knows I'll always be his biggest supporter, no matter what he chooses to do in life. John exhaled, a bittersweet ache settling in his chest. He hadn't become an architect. Life had taken him down a different path, one filled with responsibilities he hadn't anticipated. Yet his father had never pressured him, never made him feel like a disappointment. Toward the later pages, the entries became shorter, the handwriting less steady. The decline was gradual but evident, each word a little shakier than the last. December 25, 2017. It's my first Christmas alone. John has his own family now, and I'm happy for him. But the house feels so empty without the sound of his laughter. I hope he knows I'm thinking of him today, as I do every day. John wiped his eyes, his vision blurring with tears. He had called his father that year, but he hadn't visited. He'd been too busy with work, with his kids, with the endless tasks that seemed to fill every corner of his life. The final entry stopped him cold. December 25, 2020. I'm in the old age home now. It's quiet here, but the staff tries to make it festive. I miss John and his family, especially on days like this. I know he's busy, and I don't want to be a burden. Still, I hope he finds this diary someday. Maybe it will remind him of the Christmases we shared, the love we built. Merry Christmas, my boy. The tears came freely now, unstoppable and unrelenting. John clutched the diary to his chest, overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. A Father's Christmas Diary. Chapter 1. A Festive Beginning. The house hummed with the unmistakable cheer of Christmas morning. Outside, a gentle layer of snow blanketed the lawn, while inside, the warmth of a crackling fireplace cast a golden glow across the living room. The scent of fresh pine mingled with the aroma of cinnamon from the cookies baking in the oven. John adjusted the ladder as he reached up to hang the final strand of twinkling lights around the window. Below, his wife Emma sorted through a box of ornaments, gently untangling strings of beads while their two kids, Lily and Max, excitedly rummaged through the decorations. John, Lily, Max, be careful with those ornaments. Some of those are older than you are. Lily, holding a glittery red ball, this one's so pretty, Dad. Can I hang it on the tree? Max, pointing, not fair. I wanted to hang that one. Emma, intervening, all right, enough arguing. There are plenty of ornaments for everyone. Let's focus on making the tree beautiful, okay? The children nodded, their excitement barely contained as they darted toward the towering Christmas tree in the corner. It stood tall and proud, its branches already laden with strings of lights and the first few ornaments. As the family worked, Laughter filled the room. The kids bickered over who would get to place the star on top, while Emma occasionally chided John for his slightly crooked light placements. Emma, playfully, you call that straight? Honestly, John, I might as well do it myself. John, laughing, hey, I'm doing my best here. Decorating isn't as easy as it looks, you know. John climbed down the ladder and stepped back to admire their progress. The room sparkled with holiday charm, but something caught his eye in the corner, a stack of old boxes they hadn't touched yet. John, Emma, what's in those boxes? Did you bring those down from the attic too? Emma, glancing over, no, I only grabbed the Christmas stuff. What are they? Curious, John walked over and began opening the boxes. Among the piles of forgotten items was a small, worn leather bag. Dust covered its surface, and the once shiny zipper had turned dull with age. John, softly, this was Dad's. Emma paused, her hands full of garland, and looked at him with a mix of curiosity and concern. Emma, your Dad's? How did it end up here? John, shrugging, I must have packed it when we moved into this house. I didn't even realize it was here. He sat down on the floor, carefully placing the bag in front of him. For a moment, he hesitated, as if opening it might somehow disturb the memories it held. Then, with a deep breath, he pulled the zipper. Inside, he found a collection of old items, an aged wristwatch, a few faded photographs, and, tucked neatly at the bottom, a leather-bound diary. John, whispering, Dad's diary. He picked it up, running his fingers over the cover. The edges were frayed, and the once vibrant leather had dulled with time. His heart thudded in his chest as he opened it to the first page, where his father's neat handwriting greeted him. December 24, 1995, John's first Christmas. He was just a baby, too young to understand any of it, but the way he smiled when we placed the star on the tree. I'll never forget it. John's breath caught as he read the words. He could almost hear his father's voice, warm and full of love. Emma, kneeling beside him, what does it say? John, reading, he wrote about my first Christmas. I don't remember it, of course, but he did. He wrote down everything. Emma placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, her eyes scanning the bag's contents. Emma, I didn't know your dad kept a diary. John, neither did I. He always said it was just notes about work or life. I had no idea he wrote about me. John turned the page and continued reading. Each entry was a window into his father's thoughts, a testament to the deep love he had for his son. December 25, 2000. John is 5 now, and his excitement for Christmas is infectious. He wanted a toy train this year, and I stayed up all night putting it together. The way his face lit up when he saw it made every sleepless hour worth it. The memories came rushing back, Christmas mornings filled with laughter, his father's unwavering presence, the quiet sacrifices he never noticed as a child. Meanwhile, Lily and Max noticed their father sitting quietly with the diary. Lily, curious. What are you reading, Dad? Max, peering into the bag. Is it a treasure map? John chuckled, wiping his eyes quickly so the kids wouldn't see. John, not a treasure map, Max, but it's something even better. It's Grandpa's diary. He wrote about Christmases when I was your age. Lily, wide-eyed, really? What did he say? John, a lot of things. How much he loved Christmas, how happy he was to see me smile. It's like he kept a little piece of our family history in here. Emma gently guided the kids back to the tree, leaving John alone with the diary. As the evening wore on, the decorating was completed, and the kids were tucked into bed, exhausted from the day's excitement. John remained by the fireplace, the diary still in his hands. Emma joined him, carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa. Emma, you've been quiet. What's on your mind? John, smiling faintly, I'm just thinking about Dad. He loved Christmas so much. I didn't realize how much he wrote about me, about us. It's like I'm hearing his voice again after all this time. Emma, maybe it's time you let him hear yours. John, you mean visit him? At the old age home? Emma, nodding. Why not? It's Christmas. And from what you're reading, it sounds like he'd love to see you. John looked back at the diary, flipping through a few more pages. Each word was a reminder of the bond he once had with his father, a bond he now felt compelled to restore. John. Softly, yeah. Maybe it's time. The fire crackled softly as he closed the diary, a new resolve settling in his heart. This Christmas, he would do more than celebrate the present, he would honor the past and rebuild the connections that mattered most. Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Chapter 2. Memories unfold. The house was quiet except for the occasional crackle of the fireplace. John sat on the couch, the diary resting in his lap, its leather cover worn and aged. He traced the embossed edges with his fingers, hesitating for a moment. This diary, this collection of words, held more than stories, it held a piece of his father's heart. Finally, he opened it. The first few pages contained mundane notes, reminders about bills, shopping lists, and a few scattered thoughts. But then, nestled among the practicalities of life, was an entry that caught his eye. December 25, 1990, John's first steps today, right in front of the Christmas tree. I can't describe the joy I felt watching him toddle toward me, grinning ear to ear. It was as if the world paused, just for us. It's moments like these that remind me why I do everything I do. John smiled, his throat tightening. He couldn't remember taking his first steps, but he could almost see the scene his father had described. The thought of his father capturing such a small yet significant moment in writing filled him with warmth. He turned the page, diving deeper into the diary. December 24, 1995, John is 5 now. He's been talking about Santa all week, and tonight he left out cookies and milk, insisting Santa would be hungry after delivering so many gifts. After he went to bed, I ate the cookies and drank the milk, leaving a thank you note signed, Santa. In the morning, the look of wonder on his face was priceless. He told me he wanted to be just like Santa when he grew up, to make people happy. I didn't tell him, but he already makes me the happiest man alive. John chuckled, shaking his head. He remembered the thank you note. At the time, he was certain it was proof Santa was real. But now, reading his father's words, he realized how much effort his dad had put into keeping the magic alive for him. As the entries continued, John saw a clear pattern. Each one was filled with love and pride, a father documenting the milestones of his only son. December 25, 2000. John is 10 this year, and he's growing up so fast. He asked for a telescope, and I couldn't wait to see his face when he unwrapped it. Sure enough, he spent the whole evening staring at the stars, pointing out constellations and asking questions I couldn't answer. I hope he always stays this curious, always looking to the sky and dreaming big. That telescope had been one of John's favorite gifts. He spent countless nights on the porch with it, his father sitting beside him, listening patiently as he rattled off facts about planets and galaxies. John, softly, he was always there, even when I didn't notice. The diary also revealed sacrifices John hadn't been aware of as a child. December 24, 2005. Work has been tough this year, but I managed to get Christmas Eve off to spend with John. Money's tight, but I don't want him to feel that. I bought him a new bike. He's been asking for one since summer. I know I'll have to work overtime to make up for it, but seeing him ride that bike tomorrow will make it all worth it. John froze. He remembered that bike. It had been the highlight of his Christmas, a sleek red model with shiny wheels. He hadn't realized at the time what it had cost his father, not just in money but in effort. The guilt crept in. How often had he taken his father's love and sacrifices for granted? The diary wasn't all about Christmases past. It also contained glimpses of his father's dreams for him. December 25, 2010. John is 15 now, and he's growing into such a smart, kind young man. He told me he wants to be an architect. I couldn't be prouder. I know he'll achieve great things because he's always been determined and creative. I hope he knows I'll always be his biggest supporter, no matter what he chooses to do in life. John exhaled, a bittersweet ache settling in his chest. He hadn't become an architect. Life had taken him down a different path, one filled with responsibilities he hadn't anticipated. Yet his father had never pressured him, never made him feel like a disappointment. Toward the later pages, the entries became shorter, the handwriting less steady. The decline was gradual but evident, each word a little shakier than the last. December 25th, 2017. It's my first Christmas alone. John has his own family now, and I'm happy for him. But the house feels so empty without the sound of his laughter. I hope he knows I'm thinking of him today, as I do every day. John wiped his eyes, his vision blurring with tears. He had called his father that year, but he hadn't visited. He'd been too busy with work, with his kids, with the endless tasks that seemed to fill every corner of his life. The final entry stopped him cold. December 25th, 2020. I'm in the old age home now. It's quiet here, but the staff tries to make it festive. I miss John and his family, especially on days like this. I know he's busy, and I don't want to be a burden. Still, I hope he finds this diary someday. Maybe it will remind him of the Christmases we shared, the love we built. Merry Christmas, my boy. The tears came freely now, unstoppable and unrelenting. John clutched the diary to his chest, overwhelmed by a mix of emotions, love, regret, and a deep longing to make things right. Emma walked into the room, pausing when she saw his face. Emma, John, are you okay? He looked up at her, his voice thick with emotion. John, he wrote about every Christmas, Emma. Every single one. Even the ones when I wasn't there. Emma sat beside him, resting a hand on his arm. Emma, your dad loves you, John. He always has. Maybe it's time to show him how much you love him too. John nodded, his resolve hardening. John, tomorrow, after the kids open their presents, we're going to see him. I can't change the past, but I can make sure he knows how much he means to me. The diary sat between them, a bridge between the past and the present, its pages filled with love and longing. As John closed it gently, he felt a flicker of hope. This Christmas wasn't just about celebrating, it was about reconnecting, rebuilding, and honoring the man who had given him so much. Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Chapter 3. Reflections of a Son. The morning light seeped through the living room curtains, casting a warm glow on the Christmas decorations. John sat at the kitchen table, the diary still clutched in his hands. Emma was busy preparing breakfast, and the sound of the kids laughing in the other room filled the air with a familiar cheer. But John's mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the final entry from his father's diary. I hope he finds this diary someday. Maybe it will remind him of the Christmases we shared, the love we built. The words echoed in his mind, each one like a gentle nudge, urging him to face the truth he'd been avoiding for years. As Emma placed a plate of pancakes in front of him, she noticed the distant look in his eyes. Emma, you've been quiet all morning. Are you still thinking about the diary? John nodded, pushing the plate aside. John, it's not just the diary. It's everything. I've been so caught up in my own life. Work, the kids, the house. I didn't realize how much I've been neglecting him. Emma pulled out a chair and sat across from him. Emma, your dad understands, John. Life gets busy. It's not easy balancing everything. John, that's just it. He never let life get in the way of being there for me. Even when he was tired or struggling, he always found a way to make time for me. And now he's alone in an old age home, spending Christmas without his family. How did I let it come to this? John's thoughts drifted back to the day his father had moved into the facility. It had been 2 years ago, shortly after his mother passed away. Father, don't worry about me, son. It's a nice place, and I'll have company. You've got your own family to take care of. John had nodded, relieved that his father seemed at peace with the decision. But now, looking back, he realized how much strength it must have taken for his father to put on that brave face. He remembered the weekly phone calls that had gradually turned into monthly ones, the visits that had started as regular but became sporadic, the excuses he'd made when his father asked if he could stop by. Work's been crazy, Dad. The kids have a lot going on right now. I'll try to come next weekend. The truth was, he had let other priorities take over, assuming his father would always be there, waiting patiently. John flipped back through the diary, rereading some of the entries. Each one was a testament to his father's love, his unwavering dedication. It wasn't just the big moments, birthdays, Christmases, graduations, but the small, seemingly insignificant ones that spoke volumes. Took John to the park today. He spent an hour on the swings, laughing like it was the best day of his life. I hope he always finds joy in the little things. Helped John with his science project tonight. He was so excited to show me how he'd built the volcano. Watching him light up light that reminded me how important it is to be present. John's first heartbreak today. He didn't want to talk about it much, but I sat with him, letting him know I was there. Sometimes words aren't necessary. Just being there is enough. John closed the diary, his chest tightening. His father had been there for every milestone, every challenge, every moment of doubt or triumph. And now, when his father needed him most, he had drifted away. Later that day, John found himself staring at the Christmas tree, its lights twinkling softly. The kids were opening their presents, their laughter filling the room. Emma was by the fireplace, sipping cocoa and watching the scene with a contented smile. It was a picture-perfect moment, yet John couldn't shake the emptiness in his heart. John, Emma, I need to see him. She looked up, her expression softening. Emma, I thought you might say that. The kids can come too. They haven't seen their grandpa in a while. John hesitated. John, maybe it should just be me this time. I need to talk to him, to make things right. Emma nodded, understanding. Emma, then go. We'll still be here when you get back. That evening, as the snow fell lightly outside, John sat in his car, the diary on the passenger seat. He hadn't driven to the old age home in months, and now, as he approached the familiar building, a wave of anxiety washed over him. He parked and sat there for a moment, gathering his thoughts. What would he say? How could he possibly make up for the years of distance? The answer came from the diary itself. He didn't need grand gestures or elaborate words. His father had taught him that sometimes, just being there was enough. The receptionist greeted him with a warm smile. Receptionist, Mr. Harper, it's been a while. Your father will be so happy to see you. John nodded, feeling a pang of guilt. John, where is he? Receptionist, in the common room. He's been playing cards with some of the other residents all afternoon. John followed her down the hallway, the familiar scent of pine and cinnamon filling the air. When he reached the common room, he paused at the door. There, at a small table, was his father. His hair was grayer, his shoulders slightly hunched, but his eyes still held the same warmth, the same spark that John remembered from his childhood. Father. Laughing, Jack. You always cheat at this game. Another elderly man responded with mock indignation. Jack. I'd never cheat, Harper. You just can't keep up with my strategy. John stood there for a moment, watching his father with his friends. The scene was heartwarming yet bittersweet. He realized his father had built a new community here, finding joy in the small moments even in his later years. Finally, John stepped into the room. John, Dad. His father looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. Father. John. Is that really you? John nodded, his voice thick with emotion. John. Merry Christmas, Dad. As his father rose to embrace him, John felt the weight of the past years lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose. This Christmas wasn't just about the presents or the decorations, it was about reconnecting, rebuilding, and honoring the bond they had always shared. The diary had opened his eyes, but this moment, this reunion, was the first step in healing their relationship. Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Chapter 4. A Christmas reunion. The old age home stood serenely under the glow of Christmas lights, the snow blanketing its roof like icing on a gingerbread house. John parked the car and turned to look at his family. Emma gave him an encouraging smile, while their kids, Sarah and Max, bounced in their seats, excited to see the grandpa after so long. Emma, are you ready? John nodded, though his heart raced. John, yeah, it's time. He stepped out of the car, clutching the diary tightly. It was more than just a gift. It was the bridge to the past he was ready to walk across. Inside, the lobby was alive with festive cheer. A Christmas tree adorned with ornaments stood in one corner, and the faint hum of carolers singing Silent Night echoed down the hallways. The receptionist greeted them warmly, recognizing John from his earlier visit. Receptionist, Mr. Harper will be thrilled to see you all. He's in the common room. The kids darted ahead, their excitement palpable. John and Emma followed, their steps slower, heavier with anticipation. When they reached the common room, John saw his father seated at a round table, surrounded by a small group of elderly residents. They were playing cards, laughing and teasing each other as though they'd known one another their whole lives. Sarah was the first to reach him. "Sarah, Grandpa." His father looked up, startled at first, then his face broke into a broad smile. "Father, Sarah, Max, what a surprise." The children threw their arms around him, chattering away about their Christmas morning and the presents they'd opened. John stood back, watching the scene with a lump in his throat. He had forgotten how much joy his father took in these simple, heartfelt moments. Finally, his father looked up and saw him. "Father, John." The single word carried so much surprise, joy, and a touch of longing. John stepped forward, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "John. Merry Christmas, Dad." His father rose from his chair, and they embraced. It wasn't a brief, polite hug, but one filled with the unspoken words of years past. The children soon pulled their grandfather back to the table, eager to show him the toys they had brought. John sat beside him, watching as his father's eyes lit up with every story they told. Emma leaned over and whispered, "You did the right thing, John." He nodded, feeling the warmth of her support. As the kids ran off to explore the room, John handed his father the diary. "John, I found this while decorating the house. I've been reading it, Dad. It's incredible." His father's hands trembled slightly as he took the diary. "Father, I wondered if you'd ever find it. I started writing in it when you were born. It helped me remember all the little things, the moments I didn't want to forget. John, reading it made me realize how much you've done for me, how much I've taken for granted. I'm sorry, Dad, for not being there as much as I should have." His father placed a hand on John's shoulder, his grip firm despite his age. "Father, John, life moves fast. I never held it against you. I just hoped you'd remember the good times we had." John's throat tightened. "John, I do now. And I want to make up for lost time." As they talked, the other residents at the table joined in, introducing themselves. "Jack, you must be John. Your dad talks about you all the time. Says you're some big shot now." John chuckled, shaking Jack's hand. "John, I wouldn't say that. But it's nice to meet you. Margaret, he's proud of you, you know. Always showing us old photos and bragging about his grandkids." John glanced at his father, who looked slightly embarrassed but didn't deny it. "Father, well, I've got a lot to be proud of." The conversation turned light-hearted as they shared stories about Christmases past. Jack reminisced about sneaking out as a teenager to build a snowman army in his neighbor's yard, while Margaret recounted a mishap involving a turkey that had caught fire in the oven. The room was filled with laughter, and John found himself feeling at ease. These were his father's friends, his community. They weren't just passing time, they were living, finding joy in the small things, just as his father had always done. Later, the staff brought out a tray of hot cocoa and cookies. The children returned, joining the group at the table, their giggles blending with the laughter of the elders. Emma sat beside John, whispering, "This is what Christmas is about, isn't it? Family, connection, love." John nodded. For the first time in years, he felt the true spirit of Christmas, not in the decorations or the gifts, but in the relationships that shaped his life. As the evening wore on, the kids began to grow sleepy, their energy finally waning. John stood, helping them gather their things. "John, Dad, we should get going. But I'll be back soon. I promise." His father smiled, standing to walk them to the door. "Father, you know, John, this has been the best Christmas I've had in years. Thank you." John hesitated, then hugged him tightly. "John. No, Dad. Thank you, for everything. I'll see you soon, okay?" His father nodded, his eyes glistening. "Father, I'll hold you to that." As they left, John felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The guilt that had weighed on him was beginning to lift, replaced by renewed determination to cherish the time he had with his father. This Christmas reunion was just the beginning. There were more memories to be made, more laughter to share, more love to give. And John knew he wouldn't let another year slip by without showing his father how much he meant to him. The snow fell softly as they drove away, the twinkling lights of the old age home fading into the distance. But the warmth of the evening stayed with John, filling his heart with hope and gratitude. John, to himself, "Merry Christmas, Dad. I'll make this right." Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Chapter 5. A new tradition. The snow had stopped falling by the time Christmas morning arrived, leaving behind a glistening white landscape that seemed to sparkle under the sunlight. John stood by the living room window, holding a steaming mug of coffee. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of Christmas music playing from the kitchen where Emma was preparing breakfast. His thoughts wandered back to the night before. The laughter, the shared stories, and the warmth of reconnecting with his father had filled a void John hadn't realized was so deep. John, to himself, "This is how it should be." As the kids bounded down the stairs, ready to dive into their presents, John smiled. "John, hold on, you two. We're waiting for one more person this year." Sarah looked puzzled. "Sarah, who, Dad?" Before John could answer, there was a knock at the door. "John, why don't you see for yourself?" Max and Sarah raced to the door, flinging it open to reveal the grandfather standing on the porch, bundled up in a thick coat and scarf. Sarah and Max, shouting, "Grandpa!" They pulled him inside, chattering excitedly. John helped his father with his coat and hat, noticing the faint flush in his father's cheeks from the cold. Father, smiling, "Well, this is quite the welcome." "John, get used to it, Dad. This is your home now for Christmas." His father looked at him, surprised and touched. "Father, you mean that?" John nodded, his voice steady. "John, I do. We've missed too many Christmases together. That changes now." The morning was filled with the usual chaos of Christmas, wrapping paper flying everywhere as the kids opened the gifts, excited squeals over new toys, and the scent of Emma's famous cinnamon rolls wafting through the air. John sat beside his father on the couch, handing him a small, neatly wrapped box. "John, this is for you." His father unwrapped it slowly, revealing a framed photo of the two of them from years ago. It was taken on a snowy Christmas morning when John was about 10, both of them grinning as they built a snowman. Father, chuckling, "I remember this day. You insisted our snowman needed a bow tie." John laughed. "John, and you made one out of an old scarf. I don't think I've ever been prouder of a snowman." His father's smile softened as he traced the edge of the frame. "Father, thank you, John. This means a lot." Later in the day, the family bundled up and headed outside. John had planned a special activity, a snowman building competition. John, grinning, "Let's see if we can beat the snowman from that picture." The kids eagerly dove into the task, and even Emma joined in, shaping snowballs and laughing as Max attempted to stack a particularly lopsided mound of snow. John and his father worked together on their snowman, just like they had years ago. "Father, you know, I'm not as spry as I used to be." John, teasing, "Good thing I'm here to do the heavy lifting." By the time they finished, their snowman stood tall and proud, complete with a scarf and an old hat John had dug out of the attic. Sarah, "Grandpa, yours is the best." Max, "Yeah, ours fell over." His father beamed, looking happier and more at ease than John had seen in years. That evening, the family gathered around the fireplace. The tree lights twinkled, and the room was filled with the aroma of Emma's homemade apple pie. John brought out the diary, placing it in his father's hands. "John, I was thinking we could read a few entries together, share some of those memories." His father hesitated, then opened the diary to a random page. Father, reading, December 25, 2000. John got his telescope this year. He spent the whole evening staring at the stars, asking me questions I couldn't answer. I hope he always dreams as big as the universe. John smiled, the memory vivid in his mind. "John, I never forgot that telescope, you know. It made me feel like anything was possible." They took turns reading entries, laughing and reminiscing about the moments captured in the pages. "Emma, you should start a new diary, Mr. Harper. Fill it with memories from now on." His father nodded thoughtfully. "Father, maybe I will. And maybe this time, we'll write it together." As the night wound down, John and his father stepped outside for a moment, leaving the others by the fire. The snow sparkled under the moonlight, and their breath formed small clouds in the crisp air. John, I want to do this every year, Dad. No more missed Christmases. His father placed a hand on John's shoulder. Father, I'd like that. But remember, it's not just about the day. It's about making time for each other, no matter the season. John nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind his father's words. John, you're right. And I promise, it won't just be Christmas. You're part of our lives, always. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words lifting with the snowfall around them. Back inside, the family gathered for one final tradition, singing carols by the piano. Emma played while the kids belted out jingle bells with enthusiasm. John and his father joined in, their voices blending with the others in a harmony that felt as warm as the fire crackling beside them. As the last notes faded, John looked around the room. This Christmas had been different, not because of the decorations or the gifts, but because of the love and connection they had rediscovered. For the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of peace. John, to himself, this is the start of something new, something lasting. His father leaned over, whispering, Father, thank you, John, for bringing me back. John smiled, his heart full. John, no, Dad. Thank you, for everything. This Christmas, they had not only honored old traditions but had created new ones, weaving together the past and the present into a tapestry of love, gratitude, and family. It was a new beginning, one they would cherish for years to come. Please like the video and subscribe the channel.